Good morning. Thank you for joining. I'm going to do a little something unorthodox this morning. I'm going to start with product. First product, then we'll hit some slides. So I'm going to show you exactly our new Dremio AI agent. Here it is, running live in production, leveraging production data. Here's just an example of this. This is an example of a chat experience where now we leverage not only our core query engine, we leverage the LLM provider of your choice, and we leverage a semantic layer within Dremio to conduct analysis. And you can see here, just a simple prompt allows basic discovery of information. No more searching through a large catalog. I simply get access to my data. I'm saving hours by leveraging the semantic information. And you can see here a complete analysis of this. From this, I'm now able to ask more complex questions. Tell me about specifics around this data set. Tell me about aggregate information. Now, tell me about further analysis. And this is not only leveraging the data within Dremio, it is leveraging our full semantic layer and the information you provided. Well, what now? Now I have visualizations of what I did not have before. These visualizations never existed within Dremio. And oh, by the way, this is the way in which we've largely replaced Power BI and Tableau with Dremio. I no longer use Power BI and Tableau and Power BI to run our business. I leverage our AI agent. I live in this world. And you can see this. All of this is occurring through the semantic layer that's been defined by the customer, by the user. And you can see the complete analysis of this across not only visualizations, but the text to SQL and all these capabilities. This is the power of AI. And I'm excited to talk to you about this today. Now, of course, we're kicking off Subsurface World Tour. And I have to say the new format is emblematic of how we think about the business. Everything we do is about customers. So naturally, we're changing the format to be able to come see you all in person in a global space. And of course, very excited to start in Paris, one of my favorite cities. My French isn't very good, so I will not attempt that. But maybe in person afterwards, we can speak a little bit in French. Now, AI certainly is in the fabric of everything we're doing today. And as you've seen mentioned, none of us really use Google anymore. We go straight to ChatGPT or Claude or other solutions. But we know that AI will become central to every enterprise. It already is today. It is at the individual level. But we need to help enable AI to be successful at the broad enterprise. Everyone wants that. They're throwing money at that problem. We're not naive to believe that AI will solve all problems, but with the right data and context, you can deliver AI in production. And that is what we do today at Dremio, and what we're doing at lots of customers by leveraging the capabilities that are already built into the system today. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how we accelerate the journey of AI within your enterprise. Now, stepping back, we all know this, AI was first started around individual productivity. That's the wow factor we all got. The minute you launched in and watched ChatGPT, when the first time you tried it and you said, oh my gosh, I've gotten this wonderful analysis. But this has already transformed how we run. In fact, I saw the hands go up, shy but honest, hands go up around the use of ChatGPT and Claude and other solutions in what you're doing today. And that's fairly powerful. Now, to be sure, it's been all about individual productivity. It's been about how do I make my job easier in the day? Content analysis, content synthesis, all those are very important use cases. Now, on the personal side, as I mentioned, I no longer use Google or Power BI or Tableau. I go straight to these analytical tools. I can tell you within Dremio, I run the business through these solutions, whether it's our own Dremio AI agent or through these solutions like Claude or ChatGPT. I'm going to use an example of that later today. I conduct my complete analysis. I do exploratory analytics. I do sentiment analysis. All of this very efficiently, very quickly. Now, the beauty of something like MCP is it has now allowed solutions like ours to be able to be the single point for data, but importantly, business context in one location. And that business context is what makes AI work. Because if you do not have the business context, then it's just searching raw data, and we all know what happens there. So we know individual productivity, check, that works. But what's next? When you look at the broader enterprise, the reality is much more stark, shall we say. This is the study by MIT. We're leveraging their data here. And what does that show? Only 5% of AI projects have been successful. Now, we're early days. We're not naive to believe it's the only data point. But we know we can do better as an industry. And we know our investors, certainly my investors within Dremio, all want more efficiencies from AI. Now, we're not naive to believe that, again, AI will solve all problems. I want to talk about this in a moment. But what is very interesting is that 80% of organizations are deploying some form of AI to attempt to get this ROI, and yet only 5% are receiving this. How do we bridge this gap? We know AI has so much potential, but how do we go from potential to productivity? And we're going to talk about this today. And we're going to talk about how we make AI successful in a large organization, and in doing so, enable an agentic enterprise. I want to talk about what that means. This is an interesting set of pictures here, probably on the screen, but I went and looked at the data engineers out there that are in the room. If you ask any data engineer and you say the word AI, you know what they do? They roll their eyes and say, you have no idea how complex my data is, how messy it is. I have several uncurated data problems. With all that, how can I deliver AI successfully? And in fact, I love this one. I feel like I'm the guy on the left-hand side promoting the business around AI, and the data engineer is telling me, are you really serious? You know what data this AI is trained on? That's the reality that our data engineers are facing. How do we help them be successful? And how do we bridge this gap from the reality on the ground to the demands of the large business and large stakeholders? We know at the foundation, for AI to be successful, for an agentic enterprise to be successful, you have to have the right open data foundation. That's where Dremio comes in. But it's not just that open data foundation. You need to have the right capabilities in the platform to be able to enable and drive the value propositions that come from AI. So let's double click on that a little bit. If you look at what you need to deliver an agentic data platform, namely, how do you enable AI to be successful in your enterprise? There are two fundamental things at the most macro level. The first is you're going to have lots of AI tools. If anyone can predict what the right AI tool is the next year, please let me know, because I cannot predict that. What I can tell you is that it will be a diverse set of tool sets. There will be lots of money thrown at the problem. And so we need an open model and an open, flexible framework, which frankly is why things like MCP have been so successful so early in the industry. So number one is about seeding AI systems. You're going to have SaaS applications. How many of you use ServiceNow, Salesforce? Yes? In the list? All of those are going to start leveraging things like MCP and pulling information across the enterprise. Why? Because those systems need to discover your enterprise data. Salesforce is a silo. Workday is a silo. ServiceNow is a silo. How do we bridge those worlds together? And of course, make sure the data is accurate. So when a definition of customer comes up, whether you're ServiceNow or a SaaS application, or you're a custom chatbot in your environment, all of which have defined customer the right way or revenue the right way. All that's very important. So you need to see these AI systems with the right information and the right business context. We talk a lot about our semantic layer. That's what this is really about. And then, of course, you need the data platform to evolve to the changing data and query landscape. The old model was, I've got some data sitting in bronze. I'm going to go convert that in an ETL pipeline because I have a bunch of requirements from my business, and then I'm going to create a gold layer, and I'm going to present a dashboard. Everyone familiar with this? Right? That's what we do every day. But what happens when the agent comes in? Are you going to go talk to the agent and say, hey, please tell me what data sets you need so I can go create the ETL pipeline? That's not going to happen. Your AI agent's not going to say, here are the set of a priori questions I'm going to ask and the queries I'm going to send in, so please go create me the data pipeline. That is unrealistic, and that we believe will not happen. And what we really want is for AI systems to operate efficiently and effectively, and the data platform to adapt to the needs of the agentic enterprise, adapt to the needs of constantly changing query patterns and the questions that are being asked of the system, to really democratize and make exploratory analytics successful, like in that example you saw us provide earlier. how do you enable the enterprise and how do you enable the data platform to leverage the dynamic changes? So you need a data platform that can be dynamic to the ever-changing agent requests. So we're going to double-click on this and see how we can make this successful. Now, before we go into all this, I want to talk about how a data platform connects into your enterprise. And we built what we call an enterprise maturity model. Now, what does that mean? The enterprise maturity model has 4 major stages. And the reason this is important is we want to ground ourselves in what does it mean to adopt AI capabilities. Now, again, we don't think AI is a silver bullet, single-shot outcome, right? We want to make sure we iterate and reason about the solution. And so we've built together at Dremio a 4-stage maturity model around how to adopt AI. And of course, the first one's very easy. It's about individual productivity. I think we all feel good. I saw a lot of hands raised. I think we're all leveraging individual productivity today. We're all leveraging ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera. And all of those are advancing. In fact, as early as last week, we saw the announcements around OpenAI and the workflow frameworks that are coming out. Great to see those advances. And I would argue most customers are sort of in that first stage. But from that, you have to get to broader enterprise analysis. So the second stage is about taking AI and really delivering business analysis and results. And I'd argue I'm already at this stage. And what do? I live in these solutions to drive analysis. How is that possible? Well, I no longer go to an analyst. I think the view today in the industry is I have a co-pilot. I'm going to do a bunch of work, and then I'm going to go have my agent do some work. We've inverted that. You start with the agent. You start with AI first. Why? Because that means you're much more native in the experience. You get the productivity, and you get to the 80% answer, and then you sort of course, finish and finalize. So today, customers are already leveraging Dremio with our MCP interface, with our semantic layer, with our query engine capabilities to be able to conduct this analysis. So today, in fact, I had a text last night from one of our partners who said, hey, I've got this customer in Germany. I need to know which rep I can connect my partner to. Guess what I did? I didn't go to Salesforce. I opened up my cloud experience. I said, who's my rep on Schwarz Group in Germany? And you know what happened? It went into my internal data lake, pulled the information, and said, this is the person. And here's our email address. Would you like me to create a temp email? I said, yes. It created a temporary email without logging into Salesforce, without having to figure out, and I'm sure all of your Salesforce environments are perfect, right? We all know how those are. I've never met one or seen one. But you can see that's a totally different experience. I now go directly to my data in the enterprise. Last week, I had a similar analysis. Zendesk tickets, customer assessments, sentiment, all that done automatically. And just like an analyst, I asked the AI, convince me the data is accurate. Because last time you get a dashboard from an analyst, what are you going to do? You're going to ask, how did you pull this information? How did you get this analysis? You can do that with AI. And now Dremio allows and powers that. You'll see a lot of that today. We want to be that single point of access for not just humans, but all data in the enterprise for agents as well. The third stage is what we call individual automation. And I'm not quite sure I'm here yet. We're still learning and evolving. But we fundamentally believe at Dremio that 70% of manual tasks you do today can be automated through AI. And this is all manual tasks. Okay? This is about agents helping automate your daily tasks. So imagine today when I get up, I want to look at a set of emails. I want to check the status of our customers and what they're processing. That all can be done through these manual steps that are happening. And we believe more tooling will occur here. But ultimately, the idea is that when you look at any persona in your organization, more and more of their manual tasks are going to be automated from an individual perspective. What does this mean for us within Dremio? It means things like data quality checks. It means things like data observability. It means ETL pipelines are going to become much more automated from the manual processes that are available today. But this requires a strong trust, governance, and the right guardrails, because the last thing you want is AI running amok and creating horrible tables and wasting a bunch of money. So this is about us and solutions like Dremio being able to empower your teams through individual automation. And this will require not just the capabilities we're going to talk about today, but it'll also require investment in things like system memory. How do I know that the system understands my historical interactions and has individual memory for me as an executive at the company, and that I'm at the E staff within Dremio, and that I'm within Dremio, and that has all context and memory tied together. All of that will show up in the semantic layer over time, we believe. And that is the investment we're making within Dremio to ensure that no matter what client tool you use and what application you're leveraging, you have a single source of truth, not just for your data, not just for business context and the context of who you are as a user and role, but also in your interactions and from a memory standpoint and what prior interactions you've had with AI. All of this is going to provide individual automation. And finally, the Agentic Enterprise. And I would argue, I'm probably wrong on this column. Probably not complete. It's an evolving standard. But we do believe that as enterprises adopt automation, we'll start to see agent-to-agent communications happen. We already know providers like Google have provided agent-to-agent communication. But I can tell you it's still in the science fair project area. It's still got more to do. But we do know this is an opportunity for us. But to get here, you have to start at stage 3. And to get to stage 3, you got to start at stage 2. All of that starts with the right data foundation, the right security and governance, and of course, adopting open standards for agent communication and agent authentication and semantic information. Now, with all that together, as I mentioned, the reality is most of us are at stage 1. In a recent KPMG report, they found that 33% of beginner AI projects have some modest amount of maturity, modest amount of ROI. But actually, as you move further along the journey of adoption, you actually have an exponential outcome in the results for your business. So the further along you go in these stages, the greater multiplicative effect of the business outcomes you can have. And this is important. So how do we get there from a tech perspective? How do we go from stage 1, stage 2 through 4 as quickly as possible? Well, first it starts with an open data foundation. And why is this so important? Irrespective of Dremio, it's been something we've been proposing for quite some time, and we do see more of this happening. What I can say is no one can predict exactly all the pieces that are going to be available from an AI solution standpoint. A year ago, I would tell you Claude Code did not exist. A year ago, Claude Code was not the primary way in which you do development. But I can tell you today, if your engineers aren't at least trying Claude Code, you're missing out. You're missing out on productivity that could be possible. And a year from now, I don't know what workflow AI solution will be available, but I do know there will be one available for you today. But what does that mean? That means standards are changing. Tools are changing constantly. So you need an open data foundation. Of course, it starts with Parquet, Iceberg. We at Dremio have been big proponents of this. And we've been pushing aggressively into Apache Polaris, which is, again, an open data catalog, which we'll double-click on in a moment. And, of course, Apache Arrow, which we are the original founders of. All of these pieces make an open data foundation. Why is that important? Because your AI toolchain will be constantly changing over the next 24 to 36 months. If you do not have an open data foundation, it will be very difficult to be adaptive. And that is why it's so important to start here. With that, we need to step back and assess what are the type of AI workloads that are going to come into your enterprise. SaaS applications, chatbot experiences, custom applications. You're going to write all this stuff. And I'm sure your teams are already experimenting in these areas. But there's some pretty basic things they're going to require. These agent solutions are going to require continuous access to real-time data. They're going to need business context. And last time I checked, you don't want one application having a different view of business context than another application. This is why it's so important to have a semantic layer, and a semantic layer that is understood by the query engine. Why is that important? Well, that's how you drive efficiency and performance across them. If they're disparate solutions, it makes it very hard to verify. How did the query happen? What was the actual AI interaction that occurred? So within Dremio, we've been thinking about how do we enable this new world? What does it mean for the data platform? And so we've got really 4 big requirements that we see in the data platform. Number 1, complete access to data. Number 2, it has to be contextualized. Not simply access to data, and I'll explain what context means in a moment, because context can occur at your individual level, at the team level, and of course your business units and so on. All different, and you have to have that context when you ask the question of AI, with the data, of course, that's sitting within your enterprise. It has to be governed. You have to make sure the AI you're giving, or the AI that's running on your behalf, is running within your own personal guardrails, right? When I access AI, it's got to be as sender, not as some system account, because you want the context to be correct. And finally, you want the platform to be automated. Because if the platform is not automated, then you're now back to the same manual processes. And last time I checked, you can't predict what an AI agent's going to do, the type of query pattern it's going to run. So let's double click on each of these. When we think about complete, it's about complete access to data. So what are the capabilities required? First, of course, it starts with Apache Iceberg, critically important for us. And to be sure, I would say I'm not quite religious about any one of these standards. But what I am religious about is making sure that you have an open model that multiple vendors and multiple providers can access and leverage. And one of the beauties of Apache Iceberg, it is a multi-vendor Apache Software Foundation supported project. That's important because it's not any single vendor that's driving the agenda of their business. It's actually the community that's driving, which is so important. And I'm sure you've seen the recent announcements with DBT and others, right? Those are not Apache projects. Right? SQL Mesh is now acquired by Fivetran. What that means for that project is unclear. So you can see Apache-based projects are super important to us and why that's the correct foundation. From that catalog, you now want to process both unstructured and structured data. So if today your Lakehouse is primarily leveraging structured data, AI allows us to now access unstructured data, things you've never been able to do before. And then finally, you need query flexibility. For AI to work well, you need to access both lakes and lakehouses in a hybrid model, of course, and then finally, relational and transactional systems. Because if you go ask AI a question, how late can that answer be? If you ask a question, does that need to be instant? Does it need to be 2 minutes off or 20 minutes off? Today, you might do an ETL pipeline that runs every day or once a night and then generate a dashboard. Well, in an AI-centric world where you have a chat experience, you're not going to have the agent say, hey, this data is updated a day ago. Come back to me tomorrow. It's not going to work. You need a different approach, which is why you need to have the query flexibility we're talking about here. Second, you need contextual. What does contextual mean? It means understanding the business and understanding your query and analysis at the time you're running the actual question. So let's double click on that. Does that mean metrics and entities and terminology? Yes. It also means, I'm sure you've heard the word ontology. It means relationships. How do I know this is related to that? How do we know these tables are connected together? All this is very, very important in an AI world. Because otherwise, AI will have to guess of those relationships. And the minute it starts guessing, the minute you start getting into hallucinations. And that is then means you no longer trust AI. And if you no longer trust AI, you're not going to advance to the Agentic Enterprise. So this is critically important. So let me give you an example of what exactly I mean by this. So revenue is obviously something I look at often. But if I'm talking to my finance team, my internal G&A finance organization, I'm talking about GAAP revenue. That's when you say the word revenue, and when they conduct analysis, they're talking about GAAP revenue. That's all that matters to them. That's what they get held accountable to. If I talk to any of the sales teams in the room here today, I can tell you when I say revenue, they mean ARR. What's their quota retirement? Very different. That context is important because when I'm querying the system for information, have to provide the right context. Am I doing that in the context of sales? Am I doing that in the context of finance? These are critically important things. And AI can't always walk down the hall and say, hey, did you mean this or this? I don't know. AI does not have that power. We need to feed it the right information in the right context at the right time. So contextual information is especially important. And so how do we enable this? Well, this requires a semantic layer. A semantic layer that is curated and managed ultimately with the business and using AI to help support this. Now, already today within Dremio, you can use AI to bolster your semantic layer. Wikis, documentation, automatic content generation. And over time, you'll see us continue to advance the semantic layer with more capabilities. I'll give you an example of something like this. Imagine if we now have the metadata, we do today, of how you query the system. We see your finance team accessing these 17 tables all the time. We see the names of those columns, we see the descriptions. Now we can build and suggest with a human-in-the-loop model a much better semantic layer for you and actively curate and manage it on your behalf. This active curation of the semantic layer is so important for AI, because that's what enables AI to hallucinate a lot less, provide the right context and information. So Isha will double-click on this a little bit more, but you'll see us continue to advance from a semantic layer perspective. So as you think about your AI investments, don't just think about, hey, what LLM am I going to use? That actually is not the important question. It's, do I have the right semantic layer set up for my business, that if I hand that semantic layer and the context to the LLM, it's going to provide me an accurate answer without hallucinating. That's the only way you're going to get an AI agentic enterprise to happen. You need that trust. Third, governed, which is all about having the right security, quality, and compliance available. If you actually have too much data, too much context, AI will hallucinate, turns out, okay? So you have to really think about how you constrain the problem set for AI to be successful. And while these will mature over time, having the constraints means that you can have a more governed model and a more predictable model of how AI will operate. So that's, of course, in the context of role-based access control, fine-grained access control, and today, when you leverage MCP with Dremio, your agents already take advantage of the RBAC and security elements that already sit within here. It's embedded in the experience today. And this ties into the semantic information, again, which already inherit all these governance principles. Our vision is to continue to automate lineage and other capabilities here so that as AI continues to look at the semantic information, it now can take advantage of information in the platform. How did lineage happen? How did this table get constructed from all the historical ones? And thus, I'm able to now not only show you the analysis, but prove to you that this is how I constructed the analysis and why. That's how you'll start to trust, your teams will start to trust their AI experience. And finally, automated. You need a data platform to adapt the AI and agent realities that you're going to experience. As I said, AI can't simply walk down the hall and say, hey, can you create this new data pipeline for me? It doesn't happen, not available today. Maybe at some point in the future. But you need dynamic response to make this happen. You need the platform to adjust to the changing query patterns and really not get involved. Let the platform manage the changing experience. So what does this look like? And of course, it means at the most foundational level, automatic data layout. It means that I don't need to worry about partitioning. So data automatically lays out correctly. We, of course, are the only vendor in this space that do Iceberg clustering. Nobody else does that. Second, once you've laid out the data correctly, you have to deal with all the intermediate tables that exist. Well, guess what? All those intermediate tables today are done with ETL pipelines. Static approach, because they rely on a priori questions to know, what are the requirements from the business? That's what ETL pipeline elements do I need to build. So you need to make this as seamless as possible and as automated as possible. And then finally, what happens today? You're doing massive extracts or views in systems, and you have to go tell your business units, hey, go leverage this materialized view, or go change your query pattern to use this particular thing I've set up for you. Agents don't have that model, not quite in that approach. You want to give them flexibility and not constrain them too much. And so we automatically provide query rewrite. So when you send a query into Dremio, we look at that query and see how we can rewrite it to take advantage of existing intermediate tables and materializations we have automatically in the system. Taken together, this now means that as agents change their query patterns, the system automatically adapts to it. Net result, faster analysis from the agent and cheaper approach. And we see it constantly, time and time again. This is how we get predictable results, but also in a model and a platform that is automated to that experience. Where are we headed from here? Our vision of automated performance management and layout and so forth is one step of eliminating the manual toil on the data platform. Our goal is to continue adding agents and tools within our platform so we start to eat away at all the manual toil that data engineers and data analysts have to deal with within the platform. And of course, with a human-in-the-loop model, our approach is that we want to make this very efficient and effective. So you'll see us continue to do this over time. Taken together, you have these four pillars: complete, contextual, governed, and automated. You need these capabilities to enable an agentic enterprise. We believe at Dremio, we can help you drive this that much faster. So let me show you a real-world example of what this looks like. So on the left-hand side, you see what happens today. If a VP or a senior executive asks a question, it goes through a variety of teams. It goes through an analyst, who then goes and asks the data engineer team for the data pipeline. A bunch of data pipeline changes happen in dev, then get promoted to prod, blah, blah, blah. This takes weeks. I see it. The best enterprise I speak with can do this in a matter of days. And depending on where you are and what title you have, it can change, of course, the velocity of this. Well, let's rethink this approach. As I said earlier, I leverage and live in these client tools and in our own agent to do analysis of our business. On the right-hand side, you see, if I could simply have the AI ask the question by the VP ask the question of the AI, it can now query the semantic layer and construct the result. This is done in natural language, and of course provides a unified, and by a unified view of data that Dremio provides, can surface insights and suggest how it got to that conclusion and why it got to the conclusion. Because the why and how is just as important as the result itself. That's the beauty of AI and the beauty of a platform that supports those AI capabilities. Through lineage, how this result was constructed, again, leveraging that semantic layer. So what is the result of this? No more technical barriers that we've had for so many years. Insights become actionable so much faster. You get trusted data, and you get results extremely efficiently. So what does that really mean? If you look at the actual user, it means AI can serve a bridge, a normalizer for roles. It's no longer the silo of, I'm a data engineer, I only do this. I'm a data analyst, I only do this. And I think the lines are starting to blur. Because now with AI, I now can leverage more capabilities across these silos. So we view AI as a bridge across roles. And this is just an illustration of what happens. In fact, I do very little SQL in my business, in my day-to-day, but now I'm able to do more data analyst tasks and data engineering tasks with simply an AI interaction approach. And that has really changed how I leverage and get value from data. It's really about multiplying human capability in a very significant way. And now my data engineering team can focus on other problems, not having to chase my requests in data analysis. We make everyone 10x more powerful. Now, I want to show you something. It's going to be a real live demo. Everyone says you have to do a video, but here we go. We're going to do a live demo. So what you see here, I'm going to flip over. This is a little prompt experience. This is, before we jump in, actually, let me get back to my screen here. Can you all pull up your phones? Take this QR code. Okay? And in the QR code, I'll get out of the way here. If you hit it, you'll probably hit a 404 page, right? The web page does not exist. Yes? It does exist. Okay. Well, we're going to delete the page. Ricardo, can you delete the page for us? I want to show you what this looks like. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do, this is what always happens with the live demo. What I can tell you is that web page that you saw was built purely by me, actually. So this is the quick cloud experience, and I'm simply going to run it, and you can see what's happening. So this is me, not as a SQL analyst, not as a data engineer. I'm just an executive. There's a bunch of instructions that have been set up, nothing more. And I'm asking the system to auto-create me a web page, leveraging the data within Dremio, because Dremio itself, where we have all of our customer information, we know which customers are referenceable, we know what industries they're in, we know how we make that very efficient and effective. All that is available today. The net result is, what does Dremio do? In fact, we actually pull that information, that semantic information available, so we know how to define customers, how to define industries and revenue. We take all that together, and with it, we leverage things like the other MCP tools available in our enterprise. Canva to pull logos, Google Drive to pull our latest design guide, and you probably saw that earlier in my cloud experience. And I'm now able to leverage even WordPress to publish information. All that taken together means that the page is auto-created for me. And guess what? It has mistakes. In fact, if you look at it, you probably can see some mistakes. But the beauty of AI is now I've accelerated my time by 80%. And actually, I can go into Claude and say, please change this logo to this. fix this TransUnion logo, or fix this Nomura logo. All of that is automatic in the system. And this is what we mean by AI really democratizing access and really normalizing the roles that traditionally happen. Historically, I would have had to go to my analyst team, pull the data, then go to 10 other teams to go out and get this information and access this. This is all completely done. This is an example of actually stage 3 in our AI maturity model. This is me individually automating a workflow end to end. This is possible today. It's possible because Dremio provides you a semantic layer and the data, and it provides you an MCP-based interface to now access and work with other AI tools. You'll see this mature over time in the industry. This is a critical component as to how this happens. Okay? So we'll keep going here. So this is what it means. This is an example in live form showing you how you can now take an organization who's leveraging Dremio and or MCP capabilities with raw data and getting results and analysis in stage 2, and now taking and driving automation into stage 3. So crazy for me to think I just published a web page into the Dremio.com website, but I did. I did that earlier this morning. And so this really is how organizations can leapfrog. This requires that trusted data foundation. Because if I ran that analysis and I didn't have the right semantic information, all of my data would be wrong. That analysis would be incorrect. The style guide would be wrong. You get frustrated and you say AI doesn't work and you move on. But having that foundation means you're that much more successful. This is the start of our journey on AI. A lot to be done. And so with that, I want to introduce Isha Sharma, Director of Product Management, to talk more about this. Thank you so much.